Welcome back to the Ben and Russ YouTube channel. Guys, another How Tuesday coming at ya. Well, if you're unfamiliar with How Tuesdays are the day we show you how to do something on a Tuesday. Well, it's Tuesday for me anyway, so it just makes more sense. Today, we got something special in store for you. This is my wife's new hot rod. It's a 2013 Chevy Malibu LTZ. Now, does that matter to you? No, but 2013 to 15 does if you're gonna be working on yours. So what we have in store for this guy today is we are gonna be replacing the lower control arm bushings. Let me show you. These guys right here. So what this is, on the lower control arm assembly, this is what kind of keeps your control arm from going like this, right? Ours are bad and it's causing tire wear. Basically the tire's moving in and out. Now granted, could you replace a whole control arm? Well, yeah, absolutely. Some come with those. So if you decide to do that, check. Our ball joints aren't bad. Our front bushings are good. So we're gonna opt for that. The biggest thing is, with that being said, yes, they have the same amount of miles and wear, but price, big thing, budget, that kind of thing. And also another thing I like to throw out there is sometimes OEM, the original, is better than some of this newer, later stuff produced. So keep that in mind as well. So let's get this thing in the air and get something done. So we got the unit in the air. I want to give you a general consensus on why you'd want to change this. So usually you can tell, and you can see actually on ours especially, the rubber is actually, perfect example, non-existent. It is just coming apart. And what that does, it allows your tire to move forward and backward, believe it or not. I know. And when that happens, it causes tire wear and all kinds of other crap, right? So to get to what we need to do, you have some 7mm screws here, got a couple there, and then we got ourselves a couple push pins. So first off, let's get this tire off, get you a little better visual of what we're about to do here. Well, let's start with a wheel here, of course. You got yourself a 7/8 or a 22mm. Pretty basic stuff. Get this out of your way first. Gotta love these factory style lug nuts. These things suck, by the way. They swell up underneath, your socket barely fits and all that good stuff. This one might get some solid nuts. Get this guy out of the way. So we want to go ahead and get this lower cover off, and the idea is to unveil the other side of this bolt. So like I said earlier, a couple 7mm. All right, we got those 3 screws, and then right here, there's normally 2 push connects, but you can see this one's, not there. So once you get these out of the way, that panel, just let that fall out of the way. So essentially, you could use this video for information on control arm replacement as well, because essentially we're going to pull the control arm here. Basically, we have an 18mm here, we have a 15 running through here, and we have a couple, parts of the ABS cables got to pop up, and then we also have 2 18s here. The biggest thing is, the biggest tip I'll give you is watch when you're pulling on this and screwing around with your spindle, because you don't want your axle to pull apart. All right, you don't want to do that and then jeopardize an axle boot and cause yourself a whole bunch more money that's unnecessary. So let's get the zing-ins and bolts out and show you how to get this tool or part off here. Now, honestly, starting out with these is probably the best thing so you're not breaking them, because obviously you want them to kind of stay put when you're putting it back together, so just one of these little Christmas tree pullers or a screwdriver, whatever you got works pretty well, I'm sure. That's out of the way. So our lower ball joint bolt here is a 15 on both sides there, so get yourself a socket and a wrench and get this out of the way. Now it's not a tapered fit, so it'll still pop down. It's not gonna take as much effort as a tapered would be, but we definitely wanna get something in there for a little bit of leverage to pull it down. But before we do that, to simplify the tension, I'm gonna go ahead and work on these bolts real fast, crack them loose. Now, just opinion, of course, I like to crack them loose, and that way it'll just make it, we're not fighting that bushing trying to pop this control arm down. So on this other end's a 15. We're gonna have to take that out anyway, so I like to loosen that up, so hopefully that helps us with that. And right here's that 15 we talked about. Now you could do this on the ground, pull the whole thing out, but this way here, once this is out of the way, we're not fighting that bushing tension. So the whole control arm should just swivel down pretty easily. Here's an old school tech tip for you. Now, they do make tools for doing this, okay? But a muffler clamp is something you might have laying around at home versus buying a special tool that you don't need because you already got one of these. So the whole idea is to give us some sort of leverage for pulling down on that control arm. So basically it gives us a spot to hook our pry bar. Now granted, if you shock that with a hammer, it does help when it's a tapered fit, but this is not tapered. This is a straight fit with a pinch bolt, so it shouldn't take much. Now watch out for your backing plate, of course. And don't snag it like I just did. Just kind of hold this guy out of your way for now. You can kind of just squeeze it to the brake rotor, works as well. Just make sure it don't rub when you put it back together, you know? Okay. Again, now you're starting to see why I loosen them bolts up. We're not fighting that bushing tension. That was kind of the idea with that trick. Again, is it necessary? It's up to you. But I like that. It works all right. So let's zip this 18 out of the way now. And then also these two up front here. Again, 18s. With a little bit of effort, it should pull right out of there. Basically though, you kind of wiggle it around. There we go. And seeing we already loosened that up, look at that. They slide right off. How freaking simple is that? So here's a better example. You can see the rubber starts to become detached and that outer sleeve can now walk back and forth. Now this one isn't in the worst shape, but if you get these where they're real bad, you can actually slide that right out of there where the tire will move back and forth, and it's very visual. So now granted, we can put this guy on now, or you can wait till it's back up in there, but we're gonna go ahead and loosely set it on there. Just like that, and then we'll start that 15mm bolt. Now, you don't want to tighten any of this until it's at ride height, all right? You got to remember that. You want to make sure it's at ride height or simulated ride height. So for us, it's on the hoister. For you, it's on the jack. We'll probably just hover the control arm up and then go ahead and tighten them up and then pull it down to install it into the knuckle assembly. So, all right, so mine's just swiveling on there, and we're going to just fish them back in. Don't forget to put your 18s back in here. So we're going to go ahead and bring these up with the impact, but now you do have to tighten these things up, and when you go to torque them, if you decide to, again, your choice, it's 74 foot-pounds and 90 degrees because, you know, God forbid everything's torque to yield. And that does apply to these two and the front one. So 74 foot-pounds plus 90 degrees. So what I mean about simulated ride height is basically we want to lift our arm up to kind of where it would be riding at, you know what I mean, from factory on the road cruising. The biggest thing is we don't want those bushings tensioned at ride height. At ride height, you want them at the least amount of tension or the most neutral state of the bushing, because you'll get that rotational tension and you'll actually cause your bushing to wear out prematurely and cause yourself more freaking issues. So what we're going to do is I'm going to elevate this. Just use a pole jack or floor jack or jack stand or hold it, whatever you decide to do, and then we'll finalize the torque on those bolts. And then we'll have to pull her down to put it back in the knuckle assembly. So I got this thing leveled out, and it's about as high as I can go up without it causing too much interference, and that's about ride height. Now granted, does anybody actually torque these things? Well, I'm going to for instructional purposes by all means, but I'm sure it's, you know, just go ahead and torque them, it'll be all right. So 74, and let's hit a 90 degree on her. So 90 degree, obviously just kind of use your judgment, get your breaker bar, and give her a swing. All right, 90 degree enough for me. So we're gonna hit these guys again at 74, and then 90 degrees on them. So make sure that you have this bolt kind of snugged up, because you want this bushing slid over as far as possible on this control arm. You don't want to have it, I mean, these holes, there's enough slop where it could be over 1/8 of an inch. So again, we're trying to avoid that pre-tension on these bushings. So we got to get this guy at 45 foot-pounds. And then we're gonna do an additional 100 degrees. Now, granted, these aren't head bolts, but just take that in mind when you're doing this kind of stuff. And your additional 100 degrees. How do you justify 100? Well, close to 90. There we go. Now you can see how the control arm is kind of staying put, right? Well, that's obviously because, like we said, we got the bushings kind of set up at ride height, so when we lower the vehicle down, they obviously get to that point. So we are gonna have a little bit of rotational tension when I go to pry on this one, put our muffler clamp back on, get that back in, and we'll get this knuckle tightened back up on the ball joint. So, like I said, pretty straightforward stuff, guys. You can do this stuff in your driveway. You don't need a hoist and all these fancy freaking tools. Realistically, what have we needed? We needed an 18 millimeter for the control arm bolts, a 15 for up here at the wheel end, and a pry bar and a muffler clamp. That's about it. So, just remember, this stuff isn't too bad. It's just nuts and bolts. It's just nuts and bolts, friends. So, let's start getting this stuff together. Same treatment, get your bar in there, your leverage device. You can see we got a little bit of rotational tension, and we're gonna put the ball joint back in to the spindle here. That's what we were looking for. Now make sure your backing plate is not dragging on your rotor, and pop your wiring pieces back in for your ABS harness, and there's one in the center here. Oh yeah, look at that. All right, let's get that pinch bolt tightened up. Let's fish that bolt back through. Again, this was a 15. Don't blast this down with your impact. This one's a little more crucial because you don't want to break that aluminum knuckle. So we'll hit that with torque wrench real fast. It should be good to go. So we're gonna hit this dude at 37 foot-pounds. And then what's critical about this one is they want you to torque it, loosen it up, and then retorque it at 37, and then go 45 degrees. What a mess. But let's do it the right way. Okay. Now, should you use it with a torque wrench? Absolutely not. Mine's, we're gonna say it's safe to do it. So we're gonna loosen her up, and then re-hit her at 37. Okay, 45 degrees. Can you believe that? What the hell? All right, so just kind of guess. It's 90 degrees and half of 90, so 45 degrees for me. And lastly, just got to put this thing back in there, and mine might need a couple zip ties, but she just pops back in her home. Don't forget your Christmas trees. I got a couple new ones I'm gonna pop in there, and like I said, a couple zippy ties for me because this thing's in pretty rough shape. Don't forget to throw your tire on there, of course, folks. Oh, you caught the new brakes? Yeah, that'll be another How Tuesday, but not next How Tuesday. If that tells you anything. So make sure you go ahead and snug these dudes up. Now don't go crazy with the impact. I know you want to just send them home, right? Well, just don't do that. You're gonna bump them up with the impact and then hit them at 110 when you're done on the ground, okay? Okay, 110, and then do your star pattern, of course, folks. And that, my friends, is how you do a rear lower control arm bushing on your 2013 to 2015 Chevy Malibu. Pretty straightforward stuff. So for my regular scheduled viewers that always tune in just because they support me, I appreciate you for tagging along for the How Tuesdays. For guys stopping in just for the information, awesome, I appreciate you as well. Make sure you hit the subscribe button because it helps us. We're trying to grow the channel. Things are moving in the right direction. So on that note, guys, on behalf of me and my lovely 2013 Chevy Malibu, make sure you like, subscribe, share all good stuff. We'll see you on the next one.